Coogs House, the Houston Cougars head on the road this weekend to play a new opponent that feels like a very familiar foe.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, to break down all things Cougs. If you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to hit subscribe down below. That way you can listen to Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. Appreciate you making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. If you found us on YouTube, welcome back to the YouTube channel. It's so good to see you again. Remember, we're doing a giveaway every 500 subscribers now above the 2,000 mark. Next one is obviously 2,500. Hit subscribe. Help us get there. Like and comment on the videos to let us know you're in that contest. If at the end of this you just don't know what to say, you don't know what to say about the matchup, you're just too awestruck at whatever, blah, 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 tell us in the comments down below what your favorite flavor potato chip is. All right, now today's episode is going to do a lot of looking at. I paused because I'm looking at the Sooners, and I have to be honest, I was a lot more excited about the basketball portion of this game like 2 months ago. We're going to talk some about why that is, look at guys to stop and key guys that Houston's got to keep an eye on in this matchup. And the last portion, we're talking predictions. Now, I know this is just me talking to you. We usually have a crossover pod, but for a couple reasons, I'll talk more about that later. The Oklahoma game necessitates a 2-episode kind of preview. So today, it's you and me talking about the basketball part of it. And tomorrow, we have a guest to come on, talk to us some about the Houston, Oklahoma part of it. Today, with the story of the Sooners, we got to look at, in this first segment, how Oklahoma got to this point. Because frankly, in the preseason, they were picked to finish 12th out of the 14 Big 12 teams. And frankly, there was an argument that that was too high. Then they went on to win 10 straight games to open the year before running into North Carolina. Had to play them in Charlotte, so not technically a road game, but got kind of buzzsawed. They entered conference play at 12-1, right? And that's really impressive. No matter who you play, it's hard to win college basketball games. They haven't 10 in a row. But they're now, as of the time of recording of the 7-8 in conference, coming off of a loss to Iowa State. In terms of national perspective, they got ranked as high as 7th, was as high as 9th as recently as early January, but they've been unranked since about mid-February when they were ranked 25th. Coach Porter Moser got there at summer of 2021. I think his name is probably more familiar from when he got Loyola of Chicago to the Final Four. He's, that coach, right? He's been at OU since he got there in 2021. It's his third full season. In their last 4 games, they lost at Baylor. Okay. They have lost to Kansas and Norman. They beat Oklahoma State in double overtime in Bedlam at the buzzer. We'll talk more about that in a second. And then on Wednesday night, they lost to Iowa State. They are sliding back down towards that 12th out of 14 spot we thought they might occupy. And what's ultimately interesting here, if we look at the Big 12 standings and things like that, is there was a moment where it looked like they might be a dark horse to win the whole conference, at least in the regular season, because they have a fairly favorable conference schedule. They have a fairly favorable non-conference schedule. They honestly, you look at like how things are going for them, and you'd imagine that they'd be much, much higher. However, at 7-8, they're going to be down around that 11-10 spot in the conference through the weekend. Obviously, how the games play out. And it just looks like they're kind of playing themselves with like almost a long shot to even make the tournament at this point. Last year, 500 in the Big 12 did make the tournament. I should leave that on the table. But as we're talking right now, that's going to be an uphill climb for the Sooners. I'm going to tell you why they're going to, Houston's going to beat them in a second, and that's the point of my prediction later. But after Houston, they'd be 2 games below 500 and have to play Cincinnati and finish the season at Texas in that rivalry game. They'd have to win both just to get to 500 in conference play. I I think that's going to be really, really tough for them to do. I noticed a couple big glaring holes in them as I watched them. I watched Oklahoma State game first passively back when it happened, and then a second time more thoroughly, and took notes on Wednesday night as I watched them play Iowa State. And I have to say that they get some glaring holes in their defense. They play a lot of drop coverage, kind of regardless of who's got the ball. Iowa State did not have their best offensive night, and maybe that's why, but neither Oklahoma State or Iowa State demanded any sort of at the level pressure from the screen defender. They played a lot of one man help, is what I'm going to call it. What I say when I mean that, what I mean when I say that, that's English, is that they slide one guy over to help, right? You're driving and whatever, they slide the initial guy over to help. And then you kick it, and there's no helping of the helper. There's no rotation afterwards. It's really, really porous help defense. And frankly, Houston's got so many athletes that can beat guys off the dribble and beat guys in one-on-one and command that help side stuff. I just feel like you're going to see, honestly, a lot of manipulation of that. How can we make sure that the guy catching that kick out is Emmanuel Sharp? How can you make sure the guy catching that kick out is LJ Cryer? How can we make sure that the guy absorbing that double team is one of our 2 post players, so the other one is right? Those kinds of things, I think, are things that you'll see Sampson and company do on Saturday. I noticed that offensively, they really try and get the ball downhill in the paint and will bring their bigs up in screens to do so. Kind of honestly, like, I don't want to say regardless of what's happening, but it's their go-to when things get tough, right? When they need buckets against Oklahoma State, when they needed buckets against Iowa State, what they did was they'd pull the ball way up high, send a screener, and attack downhill and use their athleticism to get there. And they are really, really, really athletic. If I'm going to be critical of them, I got to give them props where props are due. Oklahoma is really athletic. They don't beat you with a bunch of height, which I think is a good thing for Houston. They don't have like a bunch of 7-footers just running through this lane and stuff. They do play a freshman named Luke Northweather. He's a big 6'11" kid. They play him a lot. But I have to say that while he's playing a lot more now, he didn't play a lot at the start of the year. He's still, I believe, coming off the bench in most instances. But he's like the only guy I'd be like, oh man, on terms of height, we're in trouble there. Because after that, the rest of their guys are 6'8" and shorter. And that, frankly, favors Houston because while they're crazy athletic, the teams that have given Houston more trouble are teams that can beat you up with size at guard spots with their guards more like 6'5" or 6'1", even, kind of like us. And if they're going to do this offense where they're just attacking the rim, they don't out-athlete us in those spots to be worried about. And I don't mean to say that they can't win this game. They're good. They've got talented kids. We'll talk about them in the second segment. But they're just not that finely tuned machine that Houston is. And if you are trying to make sure that you are driving a finely tuned machine these days, you got to go to eBay Motors. eBay Motors, where passion, drive, and patience bring home the winning trophy and keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. Over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You always find exactly what you're looking for, and eBay Guaranteed Fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusive supply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right. I think one thing Oklahoma does particularly well is be really athletic. And I don't mean that entirely pejoratively, um, but they know what they've got. They use it to their advantage. And frankly, they're rebuilding a program that Sampson himself built a couple decades ago, right? Um, they have one incredibly impressive guard from an athleticism and a talent perspective. He will undoubtedly be playing very well at home against the number one team in the country. He's the kind of athlete that's gonna be geeked up to get after it in this one. I imagine you see some like energy type of plays, like going for the big dunk or up and under, trying to like get the crowd involved or step back deep threes. I mean, against Oklahoma State, he was pulling them down from like the logo, right? I could see Javian McCollum, their leading point scorer, their key guard. He does a lot. He's the engine that makes a lot of what they do go. I could see him being the kind of guy that tries to get the crowd into it early with those kinds of plays. Javian is 6'1", 170. He's going to get the Jamal Shead matchup. Let's just go ahead and put that in pin. He's the only guy on their team that strikes me as my notes here are different with the ball in their hands. That is to say that he's not just like an athlete. He's like got some fluidity. He's got some shiftiness and he can change gears in ways that the rest of their guys maybe can't or struggle with because he's a really, really good basketball player. He shot a lot of threes in the games I watched. And I thought it was interesting that I went and looked up his stats after the fact. And he does shoot 32% on a high volume of threes. Loves to shoot it off the dribble. Loves to shoot difficult shots. It's not phased by shooting difficult shots. Has a step back in his game. So make sure Jamal's not listening to this, but it's kind of thing where like don't be surprised if he hits a couple of those. That's what he does. On the whole, he though is shooting. Make sure I got this correct here. He's shooting 6 threes per game and making 2 of them. Right, and that has to be an average because there are games where he's hitting 4 and games where he's hitting none. He seems to be very, very streaky in how he's going. Oh, there's a couple games of them, right? But he's making 2 out of 3 threes or 2 out of 6 threes per game. But that's got to be because there's games he's making 4 because there are games where he gets hot, right? And again, he shoots the difficult ones, the step backs, the falling aways, the ones with defense in his face, etc. They open up their offense a lot of times by getting him the ball at the top of the key and getting him in that first downhill action. He will then kick it out if guys are open. He does lead them in assists as well. So sometimes he'll find the drop guy for those kind of assists if he doesn't find the kick out. I mentioned, is the key to this offense, the cog that makes the whole thing turn. I think I used that metaphor, right? Anyway, Jamal Shead's going to cover him. I trust Jamal, but the way he plays could put Jamal in foul trouble. You could see them shift and maybe put Emmanuel or somebody on him. But Emmanuel, I imagine, is actually going to cover who I got as my next guy on the board here at Otega Owe. Otega Owe is 6'5", 210, a little bit bigger guy. Emmanuel's done a great job working his body. He's in a lot better shape now, but he's still a stronger build than any of our other guards are. He's got some length to him as well. I think that's why he fits this matchup better, and Jamal fits Javian McCollum better. As far as how this guy plays, he's a 12-point per game scorer that shoots almost all of his shots inside of 5 feet. He attacks the rim over and over and over. That's why you kind of want some sturdiness to your base because he's got 210 pounds coming downhill like a train, and you got to make sure you got something to absorb the contact there. Hopefully take a charge because he is susceptible to those, but moreover, just not get run through on the way to the basket. I know I said Javian McCollum's the only one that's like different with the ball in his hands, but Owe is not necessarily bad with it either. He's not going to turn it over dribbling a whole heck of a lot. In fact, he only turns it over 1.5 times per game, as is. But he is the kind of guy that like it's just gonna be like right hand, cross, left hand, cross because he's so athletic and strong that it's hard to get the ball away from him if he's just quick decisions with the ball, right? Impressive athlete, attacks the rim. He is also getting 4 rebounds. Again, I think we're putting Emmanuel on him to kind of keep him off the glass some. but not doing a whole lot of passing of the basketball, at least not to score, only getting 1 assist per game. For a guy with the ball in his hands that much, I think that as a stat would be indicative of what he looks like on the floor out there with other guys. I say all that to say that he's the kind of guy, he gets 12 points per game, but if he starts getting in foul trouble, getting some free throws because he's attacking the rim and he shoots 4 free throws a night, um, you know, honestly, that those things can add up, especially with a roster like Houston's, which has lost some of its depth due to injuries, right? And so keeping him in front, keeping your hands off and not fouling him, and those kind of things can be really, really important. He's a tough, strong athlete, but he's probably not the most impressive athlete on the starting line in the starting lineup or on this roster. I and other guys that do scouting reports for this team may disagree with me. I don't know. I guess we'll see between now and Saturday. But I was super impressed with Jalen Moore. Jalen Moore, I guess, only plays a little bit more than half the game in terms of minutes. Kind of like how Houston plays Javier Francis at the center spot, only about half the game or just over half the game in terms of minutes. Jalen Moore is 6'6", 211, plays a kind of quasi power forward spot for them. But man, he is big, he is strong, and he can fly. Really, really impressed by how easily he gets to the rim through contact and through defense. Not to say that he's putting the ball on the ground a whole lot. I mean, like, he is like just backing dudes down, or he is running through them to catch a lob, or he is running back cuts behind them because he's super, I mean, really, really impressive athlete. I was surprised, if I'm being frank with you, to see him listed at just 6'6", both because of his verticality and his long arms. He plays, frankly, like Houston Cougar plays, a lot bigger than you'd anticipate. I think, if I'm a betting man, I think he'll get the J1 Roberts matchup. Not to say that he can't. He's not. He's quicker than J1. I love J1. He's got a bad knee. He's quicker than J1. He just, even with a good knee, I bet he's quicker than J1, right? But I would think that where Roberts makes up for that will be in how intelligent he is, the savviness he plays with, and the toughness he plays with. I think that, Moore is the kind of guy that's just making straight line moves. Roberts is a smart defender, as smart as they get, really. I think we'll be able to cut those kinds of things off. And then, frankly, the other thing is that Roberts the kind of guy that understands as free safety of the defense a lot of times at that back line spot as a center and forward. He's the guy that can see those back cuts coming a lot, and I think he's as good a guy as Houston's got at defending those. I said I think because against Cincinnati on Tuesday, Javier Francis had a few moments like, oh, maybe he's turning into that guy as well. But I think that on the whole that I would still pick J1 there, and I think that he'll cover Moore pretty solidly across the back. Sam Godwin is technically their starting center, although, like I said, he's playing less and less minutes, it appears, as the year's going on. He's listed at 6'8" and change, 210 pounds. That's Javier Francis matchup, and I'm telling you right now, Javier will eat that young man alive. Javier is going to just be too big, too long, too strong, too athletic. My fear is honestly more about if Javier playing. Godwin's a senior. I should point that out. Godwin's a senior, and my fear is more that, like, does Javier Francis get overly eager and pick up quick fouls because he can dominate this matchup on both ends, right? Godwin's a senior. He's crafty. He's smart. He's played a lot of basketball. He got to Oklahoma as a transfer a couple years ago from Wofford, and at Wofford, he was kind of like, I don't know, he was developing into what I think it looked like going to be their guy. You see his stats improve over the course year to year. He played a lot of minutes even as a freshman there. This year he's playing just under 20 minutes at Oklahoma. Again, it looks like if you look at their game logs that's going to be less over the course of the season because they're going away from him and more to the freshman Northweather. Northweather is bigger than Francis, but I think the length of Francis's wingspan will help make up for that. And again, I still take him. All that is to say that we haven't even mentioned LJ Cryer and who LJ Cryer is going to cover. I imagine it's a kid named Milos Uzan. He's a 6'4" guard. He went to 3 or 4 high schools, it looks like, and looking stuff up about him. He was an all Big 12 freshman last year, but he's kind of taken a back seat this year to some of the stuff that Oklahoma's got going on with J.V. McCollum and things like that. McCollum's really kind of burst on the scene this year for them when they were, 12-1. Look, he's going to a really good Big 12 season. If I'm looking at how Uzan scores, I have to say that like he shot pretty well from 3 as a freshman. He's shooting pretty poor from 3 now. I imagine that's because he's getting very different looks with the way JV McCollum is running the offense. I don't necessarily think that means he can't shoot the ball anymore, but their offense is giving him a lot different look. So I think he gets the Cryer matchup, not horribly outsized there. And frankly, I like having Cryer on the third guard because we'll talk about that predictions segment in a moment. Cryer's become really important in this offense, and I think it's going to continue to be really important on Saturday. But first, this game is not until Saturday, and if you're like me, you're looking to win between now and then, you got to go to FanDuel because you can get buckets with your first bet at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets by winning any $5 bet. It's $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Now with the NBA, they have all kinds of quick bets, same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. I'm telling you, take the Rockets at home, not on the road. Trust me and thank me later. So as the Cougs go, I'm going to give you my prediction. We don't have a spread yet, but my prediction in a moment. But in the meantime, between now and Saturday, you can go to FanDuel.com/locked on and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, so it's prediction time. And before we get to the nitty-gritty on prediction time, the overarching prediction here is how many tears are streaming down the Sampson's faces. This is going to be an emotional game for Sampson and for Kellen and for Hollis and for Quantis, the whole coaching staff, Lauren, everybody. Oklahoma, and I thought shouts to Starnes Leland, Daily Cougar sports editor, for the PC wrote came out on Wednesday about what Norman means to Kellen. Chris Baldwin from Paper City Magazine also did something looks like similar. I hadn't clicked on that yet. It's been a busy day, say the least. Want to give credit where credit's due because this story is going to dominate the entire weekend. Really, Kelvin Sampson built that program up in the 90s and 2000s. Final Four, an Elite Eight, gave him an identity, right? Made it a legitimately strong program in his time there. And frankly, parlayed that into getting the Indiana gig before college basketball kind of took a halt or took a pause with them, right? Oklahoma was the good old days. It was, as Kelvin Sampson has said in reading Starnes, it's hometown, right? It's a great fit for Kelvin. Kelvin's a proud member of the Lumbee Nation, North Carolina, but obviously Indigenous folks have a very strong tie to the state of Oklahoma and the University of Oklahoma as well. There's that connection when he was there. It just felt like the right place in so many ways. Quantis and Hollis have tremendous, you want to go watch some clips, go back and watch Hollis Price at Oklahoma. Go back and watch Quantis and then watch that backcourt together for the Sooners. Just incredible passion, energy, the same kind of things you see Houston Cougars play with now was developed and part of this Kelvin Sampson system back then. And that's why this team feels like a program that's been developing for decades and decades when we're, in year 9, 10 or whatever, because honestly, the system Sampson's built has been built much longer than that. It's going to feel like an emotional game, though, for Sampson because who knows when this happens again. They get to go to Oklahoma this year. Next year, OU's in the SEC. Will they ever play in Norman again? They might match up in the tournament, right, or in a non-conference tournament at the start of the year or whatever, and play at some neutral site. And yeah, they'll have the Oklahoma jersey on, but playing in Norman, this could very well be the last time, right? And that's knowing that going in brings on a crazy level of emotion. I'm sure. I cross my fingers and hope that the Sooners do the right thing and have a proper welcoming crew. Obviously, like they're going to want to win the game, and I get booing and cheering, but this guy, in a lot of ways, built basketball in Norman, and I hope that they appreciate that the same way that Houstonians appreciate what he's done for us, right? I hope that's the way that goes. But that's going to be the biggest thing in this game is that emotion going in, and can Houston rise the occasion, rise above the emotion, and play Houston Cougar basketball and win this game. Um, Based on the kind of defense I saw Oklahoma run against Oklahoma State and Iowa State, I'd imagine, and my prediction here is I don't know if Houston's going to go more through Jamal as a passer or more through J1 as a passer because of how bad the help is and where you can dictate and manipulate that. I do think the two of them combined for over 18 assists. That's something I feel like is going to happen because they both see the floor so well. They both create space for others. And frankly, they're both incredible passers. They hit guys in the pocket across court. You see skip passes out of the post across the floor from J1 Roberts. You see driving dishes to guys that aren't even open yet until right before they catch the basketball from Jamal Shead. Book it now. Those two guys get a combined 18 or more assists. If you told me they both got 10, I'd believe you. I just don't know that there will be enough basketball. It's my last prediction. My next prediction is that I think LJ Cryer continues to shoot the ball well from deep. In 3 of his last 4 games, he shot over 35% from behind the arc. Multiple road games in that stretch. Cryer has been he had a cold spell earlier in conference play. He's back. I think that it's important to Houston that he gets going in this game, and I think the way that Oklahoma plays help defense or lack thereof in some cases, there'll be ways to manipulate that with quick actions that he's open, right? A great catch and shoot shooter, and I think that'll be easy enough to find him on. Now, how many times they find him or how many assists Jamal and J1 get is going to be completely dependent on how long the game goes. I anticipate this being a like 66, 67 possession per each team kind of game. Oklahoma plays slow. Houston plays super slow as far as possessions per game go. That's in part because Houston has long possessions with lots of offensive rebounds. I think that'll continue in this game. And it's also because once Houston gets up by double digits, whatever, they intentionally go to a clock it, right? They try and take a lot of the shot clock off before getting into any other quick hitting actions because they want to make sure that they win the basketball game. If the game is 66 possessions or 67 possessions or whatever, that will impact the score and keep it down some. Houston can have an efficient day on offense, but not hit 75 or 80 because they're only playing 66 possessions, right? I also think it's for what it's worth that, you'll see Houston's defense and defensive pressure wear down Oklahoma. So this game could be close to the first half, maybe even closer down at halftime. But the body blow thing about a box, or the body blow aspect of this, they're at long possessions in the second half, and you just can't let your unfocus as the game's going because the possession's so long they're going to crack at any moment. I do think that all has a wearing impact on Oklahoma. I think Houston wins. My score I've predicted is 68-58. I don't usually pick a score every week. Basketball games happen so fast, sometimes it's hard to get in with one. But after watching it, I feel like it's Houston's offense is going to be efficient. It's just about how many possessions they get. 68 points, 58. Depth. Oklahoma's going to play well at home. Those same emotions we talk about is probably also going to fuel the fire for them a little bit. I'm thinking 68-58. Oklahoma needs the game, so that probably adds to 58 versus 52. But I'm thinking at 68-58, Houston in this one. If you think I am way off base, if you think I've lost my marbles, if you think anything else about the Houston Cougars or basketball or the town of Norman I don't know much about or whatever, tell me in the comments down below because we appreciate talking to you about Houston Cougar basketball each and every day. Thank you all so much. Remember, tomorrow we're going to be on with a guest to talk about the game from a Houston versus Oklahoma perspective and a lot about Kelvin Sampson. So hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know when those things drop. And remember, Locked On Coogs is your primary Locked On podcast. Remember, that's your team, our number one in America Coogs every day. Go Coogs.